Good evening, everyone. Dan here. This is going to be my review of the Warcraft movie. I just got back from seeing it about a half hour ago. So, two things to start off. First off, spoilers. Spoilers are going to be happening here, guys. If it wasn't already entirely obvious. I'm going to be talking about the movie in great detail, and while I haven't recorded this video yet as I'm recording it right now, I'm assuming I'm going to go very long with this. So keep that in mind. The second thing is the length that this video is probably going to be. I apologize. This is stuff I'm very specific about. It's stuff that I deeply enjoy. So, sorry, not sorry. Now then. The Warcraft movie. I just got back from seeing it about a half hour ago. This is a Thursday night, so I got a Thursday evening showing, obviously. I was not happy. As some of you saw in my Twitter feed and in our community Discord server. No. 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 No, no. Now, before I start opening my mouth about things I may or may not completely understand, do keep in mind that I did do a World of Warcraft lore podcast from 2005 to 2006. Very late 2006. I believe I'm qualified to speak on this. And a lot of my points are going to be focusing on the story elements, characters, the order in which things happened, how things happened, etc. Now, some of the things in the movie they did get right. A few things they got exceptionally right. A lot of the stuff they fucked up. I should probably put a warning as to that as well. There's probably going to be some coarse language in here. I'm doing everything I can to kind of maintain a not excited, not angry tone. I'm trying to stay level-headed for this. I'll do my best. I will absolutely do my best. Back on topic. Let's go ahead and start out with the general order of events that the movie focuses on. The movie is specifically the events that happen during Warcraft 1, Orcs and Humans. Now, in the original Warcraft Orcs and Humans, the Orcs invade over the course of about 40 years. About 40 years from the time that first rift happens that Medivh helps Gul'dan open to the actual sacking of Stormwind and the retreat of the Stormwind and Azerothian survivors to Lordaeron. So we're talking about 40 years here that they boiled down and reconstructed into a 2-hour movie. I've seen a couple reviewers say, oh, clearly there are some scenes that they had to cut out there. Let's wait for a director's cut to make the final decision. I don't need a director's cut. They fucked up the order of something. So, one of my biggest gripes to start out with is the portal. While yes, it started out as this just slowly widening rift that eventually was pushed open wider and wider and then concretely, directly constructed into a portal. They did this kind of strange, well, we can open up an initial portal thing, but then we have to open another portal on the other side ourselves. Now, in Warcraft lore, that's not how it happens. In Warcraft lore, Medivh's on one side of the portal, Gul'dan's on the other side of the portal, and they slowly keep widening it further and further until they both have this dimensional rift that solidifies into what we know as the Dark Portal. Now, we're not sure who exactly constructed both sides, specifically the human side, because it was pretty much just Medivh. We do, however, know that they are near mirror images of each other. There was no, well, I can just send these few people through. Oh well. I did like that they use the souls of the life energy in Fel Magics to open that initial portal. However, no. No. That's not exactly how it happened. Although I can only assume it's pretty close. He probably used some kind of soul magic to power up his Fel energies during the original opening. That's not actually how it happened. So there's that. Once the orcs started going through en masse, the portal was solid. The portal was solid, it was stable, and it became increasingly more stable and easier to use as the years progressed. It was a long over time thing. There was not a, we can just send a few through, but then they have to figure things out on their own. That's not how it happened at all. From all accounts, the first actual incursion by orcs was a group of 7 orcs that raided some farmlands in an area known as the Black Morass before it actually became any kind of swamp. There was no Swamps of Sorrow there at a time. That was because of the Fel corruption that seeped into the land over the course of 40 years of invasion. So, that's what we have to work with here. Our first initial encounter was a raiding party of 7 orcs hitting a small farm. They came back with a couple trinkets and treasures and food supplies and things like that, and a lot of stories, which then deeply encouraged the rest of the clans to move forward and have Gul'dan and the rest of the warlocks fully open that rift. So there's that. Moving on, we have a few other issues I want to talk about, specifically with the orc clans. They decided to make Orgrim Doomhammer a Frostwolf? I don't know. By all accounts, he was a Blackrock orc. One of Blackhand's most trusted generals in the Blackrock clan. He might have been with other clans before he had became a great general of the Blackrock. However, those mentions and references are iffy at best. There's only mention of a being with the Thunderlord clan, and that's coming from the manual for the expansion to Warcraft 2, Beyond the Dark Portal. There's mentioned that Orgrim Doomhammer was, for at least a short time during his rise to power as a general, a Thunderlord. So, why they decided to make him a Frostwolf? Because Baby Green Jesus needed some extra backup to make him being a Frostwolf more epic? To make it even more saddening that Doomhammer somehow betrays the Frostwolves? I don't... The movie muddled a lot of this up entirely because Doomhammer kind of betrays the Frostwolf to Gul'dan, and they talk about uniting the clans a little bit by showing how Fel can empower people. And Doomhammer waffles all over the place about this. As far as consistent WoW and Warcraft lore says, he was a fully infused orc with Fel energies just like everyone else that invaded. The only people that absolutely refused were most of the Frostwolf clan. And even then, there are some Frostwolves that did indeed get infused with Fel energies. Why they decided to make Orgrim a Frostwolf, I think, is insulting to the story. He was a Blackrock. Orgrim Doomhammer was a Blackrock orc. One of the finest generals, one of the finest warriors to ever exist as a part of the clans. Now, it might be because in Warcraft, in World of Warcraft and later expansions, the Blackrock orcs are generally demonized. I think that's insulting. I think it's silly, and either Duncan Jones or Blizzard screwed up on this one pretty big. It seems like a minor thing. I think it's a pretty major thing. My next big problem with the orcs, Garona. Garona is this kind of whimpering slave girl throughout most of it, who is a decent fighter, but has no real personality of her own. And that's not the case. By the time Warcraft 1 happens in the history of the orcs, Garona is a member of the Shadow Council. Now, whether that's her willingly being that, or because she was being directly and magically controlled and manipulated by Gul'dan, which has been historically accurate for some time, I don't know. That could have been a major part of Gul'dan controlling and manipulating the Shadow Council, who in turn controlled and manipulated the orcish hordes into the invasion. So why it was decided in the Warcraft movie that all of a sudden she should be this slave that's abused and is then captured by the humans and falls in love with Lothar. No. Now, they did put in that Garona is the one who kills Lane Rin. Not in the right way. The murder of King Lane Rin is a vicious attack inside his own keep that Garona does herself. Now, you could argue that she had been a turncoat, that she had at some point in time been a trusted part of the human courts. That lore is a little muddled. There is no indication in the original lore that she had any kind of familiarity with the human. There may have been some in the games. I have a tough time looking that stuff up at this point. It's very poorly documented. And I only want to focus on stuff I can directly point to being documented. So she may have had some kind of history or relationship with the human court. She was, at the time that Warcraft 1 and subsequently Warcraft 2 had happened, said to be a half-orc, half-human. Not half-orc, half-Draenei. So, we'll see. I would hear arguments on if she should have been familiar. That's not the point. What she should have been in this movie is a strong, confident person, half orc, half whatever you want, with a defined, clear personality of strength, independence, and a need for power. And also knowledge. She was a very intelligent half orc, extremely intelligent. One of the few capable of very detailed documentation and writing. So there's that. And I wasn't happy about Garona at all. And nothing against the actors or actresses that portrayed them. They probably were not provided the proper source material, which is not their fault at all. Not their fault. I would not claim that anyone was a poor actor or actress in this. So don't take me for saying that. I'm specifically talking about more the writing here and how characters are portrayed. So there's that. I keep saying that. Good lord. As for the other characters on the orcish side of things, we should not, under any circumstances, have seen Grom Hellscream on that side of the portal that early on. Grom Hellscream does not see Azeroth until after the Second War. During Ner'zhul's incursions to gather magical artifacts to open up many portals across Draenor to other worlds, does Hellscream and the Warsong clan get unleashed in a blazing fury of invasions. And they do a damn good job of it. So the fact that we had Grom Hellscream, while it was very nice to see Grom Hellscream there, and very well portrayed, I might add, should not have been there. Historically, not only incredibly inaccurate, but the war song was never there during the initial invasion. They were the ones that held back on Draenor to do battle between other clans, to provide, to almost be like a local war-keeping force. I wouldn't say peacekeeping, but definitely like a local force to keep the other clans in line. Plus, Ner'zhul needed minions, so they should not have been there. Grom Hellscream should not have been there. That was after the Second War, and it specifically says this in the manual for Beyond the Dark Portal that Grom Hellscream had been absolutely chomping at the bit for a chance to go in and destroy humans. And this was finally going to be his chance, and he had not had the opportunity before. He was raw. He had been tested against orcs, and this was a time to put his savage fury to the test. So the fact that Grom Hellscream made multiple appearances, cameos if you will, during this movie was a mistake. An absolute mistake. Moving on, other characters that were in this. Gul'dan was well portrayed. He is cunning, manipulative, and eager for power in every way. Incredibly eager for power. The movie does show that him and Medivh work directly together, even if Medivh was not aware of it, which you can make an argument for. I liked Gul'dan, and I liked his need for power. Now let's move on to some of the basic human characters that we saw. Lothar. No. First off, there was no mention of the Brotherhood of the Horse, which was a major reason why the human faction wasn't simply crushed. The fact that Stormwind had these incomprehensibly strong knights in the Brotherhood of the Horse that were organized, who were extremely well trained, who were the best warriors available with the best armor and the best cavalry, and yet they were never mentioned. They were never mentioned in the movie at all. That is a travesty. That is a sin. Lothar was the finest of the Brotherhood of the Horse. We see some of those, I'm going to say some of those teachings and some of those lessons passed on through Uther the Lightbringer, who was a cleric at Northshire Abbey, who learned of the Brotherhood of the Horse, learned of some of their teachings, and put them into practice when the paladins were made, the Silver Hand was made, amongst many other things. It was a bit of an amalgamation, but we'll go on to that if we see another Warcraft movie. We'll see. Another sin, though, is that, hey, Uther wasn't in the movie at all. Not a cameo, not an appearance, not anything. Nothing. The clerics of Northshire. Nothing. The clerics of Northshire and the religion of the Holy Light played a major role in holding up the nation of Stormwind as long as they held up. Without the religious leadership of the clerics of Northshire Abbey and their knowledge and their wisdom, as well as the strength of the Brotherhood of the Horse, the humans and the members of Stormwind were able to outmaneuver and outthink the Orcish hordes for a very long time. Again, that war lasted about 40 years from that first initial conflict to the sacking of Stormwind. That's a clear and defined period. I made sure to double check my timeline. I thought it was shorter than that. It was 40 years. So they packed essentially 40 years into this movie, which I didn't feel was accurate at all. As for other character, King Lane Rin, I believe they could have got a better actor. I wasn't a huge fan of how Dominic, I don't even remember his name. His first name Dominic. I wasn't a fan of how he portrayed King Lane Rin. They should have gotten someone a lot older. King Lane was not a super young man at the time of this stuff happening. By the time we see the very first major orc incursions, he's 25, 26, I believe. At the age of 20, he was crowned King of Stormwind when his father, King Rin, was murdered by orcs in an invasion on Stormwind. I'm not sure exactly what age he should be. I believe it was documented somewhere in the Warcraft 1 manual what age King Lane Rin was at when Warcraft 1 actually happens. I don't remember. I'm sorry. This is I'm very specific about this stuff. I want to be precise as possible, and I don't remember. That was something that really I didn't feel was satisfying, though, is not only the actor choice for King Lane Rin, but how he was portrayed. They tried to portray him as someone who was very gung-ho, who was very active, who was very, I'm going to go out of my way to be there in person and do everything myself. That's not how King Lane Rin was. By all accurate accounts, he was the tactician. He was the organizer. Lothar was the general in the field. Lane Rin was the overall guy. He was king. And that goes very well with what we're talking about here. He wasn't a military leader. He wasn't the one at the engagements. He was the one organizing from Stormwind, trying his best to hold the entire nation together. Supplies, refugee issues, hamlet sackings. That's another thing I need to bring up in a moment here. Organizing military resources, planning out tactics, talking with the clerics of the Northshire Abbey and the conjurers of the court, who were two very specific groups, I might add, both of which not included here in this movie. Disappointing. Very disappointing. In this movie, in the Warcraft movie, King Lane Rin, he's in engagements. He's at engagements. That never happens. That never happens in the history. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep calm. It never happens in the documentation for any of this stuff. If someone goes out and does something, it's going to be Lothar. It's going to be the Brotherhood of the Horse. It's going to be these ridiculously well-trained, armed and armored knights that just cleave and outmaneuver orcs. And we didn't see that. We didn't see the impact of the thought and the planning that Stormwind takes that had them starting to win that long war of attrition. Which again, I was very disappointed about. The Queen, meh. We don't have a lot of documentation on her though in the first place, so I understand why they might not have a lot to go off of. And I'll get to that point later. Other characters, Morose. It was nice to see Morose in a role other than smashing our faces on him as a raid boss. I believe Medivh was portrayed in an alright manner. The actor did an alright job with the material he was given, but there was no grand contest in his mind. Absolutely no grand contest in his mind going on by the point that we see orcs in the picture. By the time orcs reach a point in which they are having some kind of physical contest, some physical warfare with the humans, Medivh is already entirely under control by Sargeras. Entirely under control. He is pretty damn well demonified. So there's, in the movie, Medivh Medivh is portrayed as not knowing what he was doing. He was portrayed as a good guy for a lot of it, and then all of a sudden, oh no, he's a bad guy. Oh, he's a bad guy. Okay, I guess he's a bad guy now. In the game, in Warcraft 1, it was discovered he was a bad guy the whole time, and he had been directly misleading the entirety of Stormwind the whole time. He brought the orcs to this world due to Sargeras's manipulations and control over his very soul in order to conquer Azeroth so he could control it. Again, that wasn't shown. That wasn't portrayed at all. In fact, quite the opposite was portrayed. That Medivh all along really wanted to just defend Azeroth. That he had no control over any of this. Which is excessively inaccurate. Now let's talk about some of the major activities, major events rather, in this movie, or rather lack thereof. A lot of this movie focuses around personal engagements. A couple battles were portrayed. The sacking of Red Ridge was shown for all of 10 seconds, I believe. One of the most major events in the Warcraft game, the Warcraft 1 game, was given very little time. Another major thing, another major battle that was not even seen at all ever in this movie was the battle for Grand Hamlet, which eventually turned into Darkshire, for those that don't know. Grand Hamlet was one of the largest towns, in fact, in the Kingdom of Stormwind at the time, and was also at a key choke for getting forces from the Swamps of Sorrow into Azeroth proper, into Stormwind proper, into lands that would be easily raided. So the holding and defense of Grand Hamlet meant that only very small parties of orc warbands could get through their defensive lines to raid human territory, like serious human territory. Battle of Grand Hamlet was never shown. In fact, it may not have even happened in this Warcraft movie. If you play the Warcraft 1 game, you will experience it. That's all I can tell you. The sacking of Stormwind, which I thought would be the conclusion to the movie. Nope. But in the movie, Stormwind's still intact and they're trumpeting the Alliance. The Alliance doesn't fucking happen until after Stormwind is obliterated after these 40 years of war. And Stormwind's refugees march all the way up, or rather sail all the way up to the shores of Lordaeron. The cold shores of Lordaeron, I might add. It's wintertime when they land. And at that point, the Alliance is formed. But based off of specific treaties, of human nations coming together, and of specific encounter. We also see some made-up events. The parlaying, or the meeting, of the Frostwolf clan and the humans at Blackrock Spire. If anyone can find a piece of documented evidence of that actually happening in Warcraft lore, I will stop broadcasting for the rest of my life. That never happened. That never happened. Ever. Ever. So why it was a massive event all of a sudden, where orcs were captured and humans were killed and it's the end of the Frostwolves. Nope. I do like that it was Gul'dan that destroys Durotan. That makes sense. And I believe it's relatively historically accurate. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of small things I liked. There were a lot of small visuals, references, details in armor, different graphics. The spell, the spell imaging was decent. They shoehorned Awen into this, but with a different name. She was the, for those that don't know, Egwene is the previous guardian of Tirisfal, who grants that power to Medivh, while also accidentally putting Sargeras's fragmented soul into Medivh's body at birth. Oopsie. She gets shoehorned in under a slightly different name into this movie, and is presented as this ancient and unknowable force that is kind of like a grand protector of the realm that was really not understood. Which is like, no, these are well documented, and you guys could read the stories of the Guardians of Tirisfal. Everyone, if you haven't done so yet, go out and read the stories of the Guardians of Tirisfal. It's actually pretty interesting stories. Egwene especially, and her duel with Sargeras at the roof of the world. Very interesting stuff. If you have an opportunity, by all means. I really don't like how Awen is shoehorned into this movie at all. Again, it's this strange all-black obelisk that has this kind of seething black force with it. And apparently Dalaran, which is already floating in the sky for no good fucking reason, has been saving it for something? What for? I don't know. I don't know why they keep it. They just keep it. They like to keep stuff. And the fact that Dalaran is already floating makes me wonder, how is Arthas, when he's destroying Lordaeron as a member of the Scourge, in fact, as the Lich King's champion, going to get up there to do what he has to do, get the Eye of Dalaran, so he can summon the Demon Legions? That's a pretty big part of Warcraft 3. For those that haven't played Warcraft 3, Arthas becomes Scourge, summons demons. Just so you know. Well, technically it's Kel'Thuzad that does the demon summoning. You get the idea. Medivh, poorly portrayed. He was a little more competent at the time of all these events happening during Warcraft 1. And of course, he, much like the movie shows, does assist Lothar and a small force of Brotherhood of the Horse members in assassinating Medivh. Unfortunately, the damage is done. The portal has already been opened for a long time. They only are just now realizing how far Medivh's madness and possession went. And Medivh very much was possessed by the end of all things. Very much so. Now, as I said before, there were a decent number of tiny things, tiny details that I appreciate. And if I can give Blizzard credit for one thing, they have an eye for those small details. However, I feel this movie fell to the same infection, the same disease that infects the more recent World of Warcraft expansion packs. They have done everything in their power to go for flash and shine over substance, over actually showing what happened, which I believe would have made a much better movie. There wouldn't be this personal intrigue and this, well, maybe we can have peace, or how do we stop this, or whatnot. A real movie about this would show the infighting of the clans, would show that slow attrition of the human nation of Stormwind, which was essentially isolated because of its location. If you guys have ever played World of Warcraft, you will know that Stormwind is in its own corner of the world. Much like Ironforge is in its mountains and it sits there, much like how Darnassus is over in its own corner of the world. At this period of time, Warcraft 1, the human nation of Stormwind is an isolated force. It doesn't have contact with elves. It barely has contact with dwarves. The only evidence that we ever found of dwarves having been in general contact with Stormwind was that the dwarves built Ashkandi, which was the great sword of the Brotherhood given to Lord Lothar. And the fact that they don't refer to Lothar as Lord Lothar or Sire Lothar. He was one of the most well-respected members of the Brotherhood of the Horse and most competent tacticians, and I'm not sure what rank he was. He might have been a general as well. I'm not sure the rank he had with the military and the Stormwind Kingdom itself. But when King Laenrin was assassinated by Garona, while under direct control of Gul'dan, the nation turned directly to Sir Anduin Lothar to lead them. Mostly because he was probably already doing it. He was already saying, oh, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Oh, we're losing this war. This town about to be sacked. And sacked it was, which is how the movie should have ended. Instead, they have horrible references and pretenses to the Alliance. They don't show the murdering of the clerics of Northshire, which directly led to what happened with Arthas, because of Uther, of course. They don't show Orgrim Doomhammer taking down Blackhand. Now, in the manuals, it talks a lot about how when Medivh was murdered, it sent a psionic backlash that shook everyone, and fucking Gul'dan was thrown into this coma for weeks on end, and when he woke up, oh, I got everything changed. I don't care about that. If they didn't want to include that, they didn't want to include that. I would understand that in a heartbeat. However, it is not Anduin Lothar who takes down Blackhand. It is Doomhammer who challenges and destroys Blackhand and presents evidence of how he was a faulty, manipulated war chief in direct control of the Shadow Council. And after that is presented, and after Garona is directly interrogated for long periods of time, the Shadow Council is hunted down and slaughtered, except for Gul'dan, who is protected. That didn't happen. The fact that it's not Orgrim Doomhammer that destroys Blackhand 2, and that it's just a couple swings of a sword by Lothar, that's fucking insulting. While Blackhand was a manipulated fool, he was also one of the greatest raiders, one of the greatest threats as a single warrior could be to anyone else. He was an incredibly powerful fighter. So, the fact that Lothar just takes him down, stab, that's insulting. That should have been an epic fight to end all epic fights. the movie was a mess. Now, if they had done it right, by the end, we would be seeing the formation of the Alliance in Lordaeron. We would be seeing Alonsis Fowl and Uther just beset by sadness by seeing their brothers and sisters of the Church of Northshire Abbey slaughtered, and being forced to look at all their beliefs and say, we weren't able to defend the people of Stormwind. We have to figure out how to do it better. Okay, Paladins, this is how we do it better. We didn't see that. What we should have been right now is set up for the latter half of Warcraft 2, of the orcs pushing north, taking the entirety of the Dwarven lands, except for a few holdouts, of gaining control of the dragons, of bringing the ogres in, and setting up for the destruction of Lordaeron. And Lordaeron saying, we will bring this alliance together, and we will all stand against you, or we will fall together. Not this, oh well, we lost a few hundred people, our king died, let's all make an alliance now, yay! No, the Alliance of Lordaeron would not have happened had the Elven lands not been threatened. If Cosmodan hadn't been invaded entirely. If areas like Stromgar and Gilneas hadn't been directly threatened, there would have been no Alliance of Lordaeron. And it is specifically called the Alliance of Lordaeron. What we know as the Alliance started out as the Alliance of Lordaeron, and there was no lion symbol at the head of it. It was the giant white L logo for Lordaeron. And if you want to look up the art for that, it's in the Warcraft 2 manual. It's a gorgeous banner. That was the symbol of the Alliance of Lordaeron. Wasn't in there. The fact alone that Stormwind wasn't sacked in this movie is pathetic. And if that's going to annoy me till I'm done even remembering this movie years down the line. In conclusion, there are many more things that I did not like about this movie, that disrespected the lore, the history of all these games. And this is one final spit in the eye to those of us that deeply appreciated it. The deviations, the changes, it's all been disgusting, and it shows why, in many ways, the latest expansions to World of Warcraft have gone in such a bad direction. This movie was immensely lacking substance and structure. It lacked fact. It was a very creative and poorly done interpretation of the happenings of Warcraft 1. They did a disgustingly bad job with the writing, with the characters, and even with some of the setting. The events depicted were inaccurate to Warcraft 1. Upon my recommendation, I would say no one should see this movie. If you want to get a good idea for what Warcraft is all about, and specifically the time period we're talking about, play the games. Read the manuals. There's a wonderful, rich lore in them that you won't be able to get anywhere else, especially this movie. I started out trying to enjoy it, and for some of it, I really did enjoy this movie. But the last third of it absolutely disappointed me. Absolutely disappointed me. I really did try. It is not worth the money. Now, if I can point to a failure or a possible series of failures and how this happened, I don't think I'm capable, or I don't think it's possible to do that in someone in my position where I don't know who did the writing. I don't know if Duncan Jones, the person who essentially brought all this together, had any kind of direct control over the script. Maybe he did. In which case, I would certainly say he did a very poor job. Perhaps he didn't get a proper grip on lore. I know Chris Metzen was involved in the actual... I don't know if he was involved in the writing, actually. I mean, I know he was involved in the movie in some form. I don't know what kind of form, though, that was. He was an extra in the movie. I don't know if he was brought in for the writing at all, though. If he was, though, this was just another case of him forgetting his own writing, which he has done many times, and has shown that he really doesn't care about his own writing in the first place. Don't see this movie. Don't see the Warcraft. Play the game. Play Vanilla WoW. Experience the lore for what it was, not for what it is. Because the direction that it's taken is definitely a lesser one. It's one that is shallow. Is one that has form without function. Structure without substance. It's shiny and it's pretty on the outside, but when you look inside, it's hollow. Those are my thoughts. Feel free to comment on your thoughts on the Warcraft movie if you so choose. I certainly don't mind. More discussion is always better. Also, while I deeply appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts in more public areas like Discord and our Twitch chat, I'm going to ask for at least the next week or so, we just keep discussion to this YouTube video's comments. A week or so past this, and I'll actually be able to discuss it on air without worrying about spoilers. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. I am Dan, the Ancient of Lore from WoW Radio, and a very staunch, eager community member of the Vanilla Server Initiative. Good night, and good luck.